want to welcome everybody that's joining us today to the learning series. This is a monthly event that we like to do at VCIO Toolbox, where we bring in industry experts and other partners to share some of their stories with the community. Generally not about the things that you guys hear me talk about all the time, which is probably a benefit to everybody. But with us today, we've got Abe Garver from Focus Investment Banking. Many of you might recognize Abe. He's been with us a couple times now here in the learning series, and he's also joined me multiple times on the MSP Business School podcast. He's an M&A advisor within the industry, and I'd like to say the leading M&A advisor, but more importantly, he's been a resource to really help anybody, whether he's involved with them or not in the industry, better understand what the world of mergers and acquisitions and PE-backed platforms is about. So, Abe, I want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Brian. I think we were joking this is like a three-peat on Saturday Night Live, where you get a couple of these under your belt. So,
well, that's where I'm separating out those. I'm separating out those two things, Abe. You get a 5-peat on the podcast and a 5-peat here, so you might have a couple ropes coming to you down the road.
We love the partnership with you. It's great.
Also joining us today is Willis Cantey from Cantey Tech Solutions, and Willis is a new contact to me. He has got very exciting news that I'll let him share as we go through this process a little bit, and he does his own formal introduction. But Cantey Tech is one of the leading IT firms down in the Southeast, and they've done work with us over here at VCIO Toolbox, probably going on about 6 months to a year. So I want to welcome you, Willis. And before I turn things over to you guys a little bit, a couple quick things. First, I always have to introduce my friend Rachel James here, our Director of Community at VCIO Toolbox. She will be keeping track of everything from an administrative standpoint today. We love to keep things very interactive. Please ask your questions, post them either into the Q&A or the chat. Rachel will be happy to pose those questions in real time to Abe, Willis, or myself, depending on what it may be. So please be interactive. There's nothing here that is sacred. We want you guys to engage with us. Another couple other quick things that I just want to lead off with before we turn it over to the program. Some things coming up in VCIO Toolbox. First, I'm excited to share that Rachel's taking a little bit more expanded role with us as well. So we're going to be building out a lot more learning content and more engaging content for our customers to really engage in some coaching methodology and really make sure that we get more of the questions answered, and she'll be able to direct you to those questions as well. Her underlying skill set is around video editing and production, and comes from that industry. So that's a huge help from my seat. So we're excited to have her come in, and you're going to see some great things in terms of learning resources and educational resources beyond what we've been doing for you thus far in 2022. But that's all I want to share about what's going on in VCIO Toolbox. These guys have some great content, and I want to make sure that we have all the time to maximize it for the story that Willis and Abe want to tell. So first, guys, why don't you introduce yourselves maybe a little bit deeper and share a little bit more about your background? Willis, why don't you take this first, and then we'll go to you, Abe.
Certainly. So my name is Willis Cantey, and I'm proud to say that I'm the CEO of Cantey Tech Consulting. We've been in business since 2007. We've focused here in Charleston, South Carolina, but we've grown well beyond that over the years. Got about 80 folks and have expanded. We're in 17 different states, supporting what a lot of you MSPs are supporting yourselves, a wide variety of clients from small and medium-sized businesses, law firms, medical practices. And we do a lot in education as well. We also have some good news is that recently, so when I tell you I was on your side of the conversation, I was until about 3 months ago when we partnered up with L&C Partners, which is a fantastic private equity firm. I'm also proud to say that we did that with the help of my friend and advisor, Abe, and the team at Focus Investment Banking. So that's a little bit about me.
And obviously, we're excited to hear your story of what that journey looked like and your insight into what you might need to consider if you're an MSP thinking about launching a platform, but also what should an MSP be thinking about when they want to be acquired too? That's certainly something that you just can't prepare overnight and get ready for overnight. So it's always great to help MSPs understand a little bit about that timeline, what it looks like, and how you need to get yourself organized so you can maximize your exit as well. Abe, maybe take a moment now and share a little bit for those that haven't had a chance to know you, to get a little bit more insight into what you do and what Focus can do for them.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Willis and Rachel. So Abe Garver, and we've been super fortunate. Our MSP team within Focus Investment Bank, we've advised and helped close transactions with 25 parties in the past, MSPs in the past 18 months. Have another closing, I believe, happening this coming week, and then another 2-3 weeks after that. So kind of a double from what we did last year. Super fortunate to get to help now 11 founders, bring their businesses from not having any institutional capital or private equity money in helping catapult them into becoming a platform, as Willis has just done. And just a little kind of brief backstory on how I got to know Willis. We've been working on buy-side assignments for about 5 years, and over those years, myself and 2 other colleagues had emailed Willis and said, "Hey, we have a private equity group that has 100 million, would like to back you as a platform." And what was fascinating about my interactions and experience with Willis was, for years he did not respond, or just responded very politely. He's an absolute Southern gentleman, responded very politely, and then all of a sudden, about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, myself and 2 other colleagues got emails back from Willis saying, "Hey, I'd be open to a conversation about M&A." And we immediately knew something's up, it's time to, jump in our cars, get in planes, and spend some time with Willis. And I got to tell you what, it's kind of some advice I would give to every MSP listening. What was really smart about what Willis did was he didn't get distracted with this, perpetually people bombarding to have M&A discussions. I could tell he very purposely kept a folder of everyone that had contacted him over time. And when the time was ripe, he jumped into action and it has just been exceptional. And I think that it's, as I pull the camera back here and say, why do we have, I think the same skill that Willis has of prioritizing when he's a 9-year straight Inc. 5000 fastest growing MSP. He's exceptional. I'm going to put forward, and I don't know that I've said this to you, Willis, because he can prioritize and not get distracted by, "Hey, do you want to have a conversation about M&A?" when it's not the time. He knows how to focus on organic growth and has this 9-year track record. And was, as you'll find from this conversation, had many of the things that a private equity group searches for when they're looking for a platform. And I think he's really an exceptional, kind of leader for other MSPs, especially in the Southeast. And we'll talk about this more in the conversation. I think he is a great kind of peer group member, and peer to, can be peer to each of you, and help you be successful in the same way he has. So I'll pause there. Anyway, that was a long introduction, but thought you'd appreciate that color on how I got to know Willis and our firm did originally.
Abe, thank you, but we're not going to pause there. Rachel, I want you to cut the interview right here and we'll call it a wrap.
We're done.
That's all, folks.
That's
George Costanza. We're
done now.
That's as good as it's ever going to get. So I will tell you, and if I may, Brian, to add on to what Abe did, which was really remarkable in helping me. I did, when I started talking with folks, I would document what I did. And if you're an MSP out there, you know what I'm talking about. You get an email or a letter or a phone call, and you never know how they get your number. Or LinkedIn, probably more frequently, you get people interested in talking to you every day. And so I kept most of those that looked like they were serious, and I sort of did my homework on them. But You want to be polite and respond and no, thank you, I'm not interested this time. But then at one point, I started talking with a few of them. And before I knew it, I had this much of notes and documentation and folders of folks that I could look at. And I think that I spoke seriously with 11 different groups. And I'm not saying I recommend that, but it did help you get a feel, not just for what your company might be worth, which is important, but who you might be working with and how this game is sort of played. What are the terms and what do they mean? And what's the right scenario for you? Because you can get, as an MSP, whatever scenario you want. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for you to talk with folks. And you have to value your time too, because 50 people just want 2 hours of your time.
Yep, and there's a lot of them out there claiming to be part of the game these days as well. And we're seeing, the MSPs I speak to are speaking exactly to what you're saying. Well, they're just getting bombarded with requests to talk about, mergers, acquisitions, potential exit plans. And it can be very confusing too. And hopefully that's what we're going to do today, is maybe shed a little bit light into what that process looks like and how you can decipher through it, because what your acquisition looks like may look dramatically different than what we're going to talk about today. There's so many different varieties. There's private buys, there's the PE-backed opportunities, there's the platform-backed, and sometimes it's just a pure old-fashioned two companies come together for a merger, but then there might be another step on the highway. So, I'm excited to hear what we've got to share for today. So, Abe, I think you've got some slides that are going to help guide our conversation and provide some facts for folks.
Sure, and let me pull those up real quickly.
And if we do run into any issues with this, we can certainly help out.
So I'm just going to jump in and there's, super strong demand from private equity groups right now. There was a May story in Buyouts magazine where Clearlight was referencing that made an investment in ICS, and it's a land grab right now. And I would say it's a selective land grab. This year we had at the end of January something that even added more fuel to the fire, which was one of the first generation PE-backed MSP platforms, Thrive Networks. MC Partners made the investment. And this is a slide. The next three slides are from the Enable Empower conference, which was held in June. And AB from MC Partners presented these three slides and basically showed, kind of similar to what Cantey Tech, the journey that it's beginning. This business started out, the Thrive business was a spin out with 13 million of revenue. It's projected to have 115 by the end of the year, and kind of $1 million of EBITDA to start, and got to call it around 20 million of EBITDA when Court Square, a larger private equity group, did a recapitalization at the end of January. And what AB told us at this Enable presentation, and there were several of us presenting, was he said, our firm generated a 5.2x on invested capital return. And in another conversation with him, I understood that one of the first targets, kind of first acquisition targets, had an even, kind of greater return. So as we think about Willis's business right now, where he is on this timeline, and just kind of a couple other slides on MC Partners and AB, one of the partners that led the transaction, where we think about where Willis is right now, and what's so exciting to those that are listening in that are MSPs considering a transaction. The platform investment has been made kind of here in the center by LNC into Willis's business. He's rolled equity, and he's in this for an extended period of time with this investor. And the objective, is twofold: is to continue. I'm going to stop the screen share for a second. It's to continue the organic growth, which Willis is a master at organic growth. He's got 9 years straight of Inc. 5000. And it's to find kind of exceptional partners like you listening to do, to have a merger of equals, kind of merger, kind of join forces, both from a geography, capabilities, and other kind of strategic perspective with Willis's business. And the goal is to do what MC Partners just did with Thrive, which is to let's get to 15 million of EBITDA, 20 million of EBITDA, and let's transact up at 16, 17, 18x. And that's really kind of the journey. And we're in early hours of that with this transaction, having closed recently with Willis. And I'll pause there.
Awesome. So I think that's something important that we should touch upon too. What does a transaction like this mean to ownership? One of the things that, that I recall, when I sold mine, there was an old adage, you only get to sell this thing once. But I think that's changed a little bit today in the new model as well. So, I definitely want to make sure if this isn't the time we cover off on that as well. But Willis, maybe you've got some thoughts.
Right. So I started looking, my team and I got together, and we had been growing. We had a pretty flat year during COVID, which was a lot better than what some folks had to deal with. But other than that, we'd been growing at over 20% a year on average for 13 years. And we said, all right, we want to continue to do this. And here's our 10-year goal. And we knew to get to our 10-year goal that M&A had to be a part of that. Right. And we were excited about that. You get excited about going into new markets and bringing on new people and getting better. So we looked at that and I thought, okay, well, I've saved some money over these years and the bank has said they will lend me some money, and can I go out there and acquire other MSPs? And you can do that once. You might be able to do that twice. After that, you run out of money and the bank begins to say, no way. So we thought, all right, what are the other options and what are some groups we can go with? The process we went through was after talking with folks I knew fairly early on who were the folks that I had great conversations with. And you're going to be working with these folks, not every day. Most of them are not operating partners, they're financial partners, but they help you think through things. And they have expertise in investing in platforms, right? And those platforms then acquire other businesses and they become part of it. So they can help you with integration and all this. It was not just about the money, it was about the excitement about building something bigger. And already, and I haven't been doing this long, but I've had a chance to talk with a lot of different business owners that frankly do a lot of things better than the way we do them. So when you add them together, that's how you get the value. Sure, you're adding numbers on top of numbers, so the revenue's bigger and the EBITDA is bigger. But you're learning how they're growing in this market, what they're doing around security, how these folks handle things with AWS, whatever it may be. You're learning each time we have the conversation, hopefully each time we add on groups. And I wanted to have a partner, frankly, that would rather do 5 good acquisitions over the next 5 years than 15 sloppy ones. Now, I don't say this to say that everybody's out there trying to slap it together and all this, but we are a careful, patient group. And we care about doing things right, and we care about holding on to the clients. And there are investors who believe in that too. And luckily I found one with LNC Partners. I call them a lot more than they call me, which is refreshing, right?
That's an interesting statement you make too, because I think that kind of brings out to the marketplace. There's, one of the fears that I hear sometimes from an MSP that may be acquired under a PE-backed type platform. It's that, am I just part of a roll-up? Am I just part of the number? And am I going to have a voice in this? And it sounds to me what you were looking for, Willis, was really complementary skills that broadened the portfolio and brought the right like-minded people together with a more patient approach versus some of the roll-ups that have occurred in the past where it was strictly how quick can we add the numbers, because we might already know who the buyer is at the end of the rainbow if we can get that put together.
Brian, I couldn't have said that better, but I'll try. When I hear the term roll-up, I think about the gross snack that my mom used to put in my lunch bag, right? Nobody builds their business and says, one day I will build this business and I will become a bolt-on,
Yeah.
right? That is not inspiring, right? We're not just looking to tack folks in and say, all right, welcome to the Cantey world. This is how you do it. And we want to strip out everything you've learned and done differently. No, we want to learn from each other. In the same way the good MSPs learn from the great employees they hire, right? Half of the technology that we use, somebody brought in from somewhere else or somebody had ideas. So it's the same way with the business, is that I don't care about who has the ownership. We're partners. And in our case, and not everybody looks at it this way, but in our case, I want everybody to stick around. And I certainly want the folks that have helped build that business and their management team to stick around because they're doing something right, or we wouldn't be interested in them, or we wouldn't be offering them millions of dollars, right? So and there are other groups that folks who want to sell their business and move on within a short period of time. There are plenty of great groups out there, and I can give you their names. I talked to plenty of them. And Abe knows all of them. But for the folks that we're looking at, this is a relationship and sort of a commitment for the next 5, 7, 8 years. We're going to be doing this together, and it could be well beyond that. I'm really not looking to retire in 5 to 7 years. I have hobbies, but I don't have friends who I can do those hobbies with over the weekends. And the idea of a 2 martini lunch sounds pretty good, but not every day. So I'm looking for folks that enjoy what they do and want to continue doing it.
There's truth to that. Folks talk about that exit and getting out and what they're going to do next. But the reality is, if you don't have people to partake with, it can be very lonely at that stage. And for most of us, and this is a common question we ask on our MSP Business School podcast, but what do you want to do when you retire? And the most common answer is, I'm not going to retire. Because most of the people that are in this industry are just intrigued by continuing to self-educate themselves and be a part of something bigger. It's why most of, MSP started out on that mission too, that, we see these folks are not looking at the end of the rainbow. So if you can build something greater, that's awesome along the way. So,
well, and some of the folks that I've talked to, Brian, nobody says, what do you want to do when you retire? Nobody says, chase accounts receivable, right? Nobody says, interview forever, right? Some of these things that make life difficult for these founders or owners, if they become a part of a platform that's a good fit, they might not be doing as much of that as they used to, right? Hopefully they're not having to do a lot of that already, but a lot of us wear every hat for so long. When you're part of a larger organization, you're allowed to focus on the things that you do best.
So that's probably a great segue. I don't know, Abe, if you want to expand it on anything on that, but I think we're probably segueing into, what does this opportunity look like for somebody that may be joining into an MSP based, an MSP platform? Abe, anything you want to share first from your perspective on that?
Sure. And let me to share this slide, and then we'll dovetail into that. Oops.
And while you're doing that, the thing I love is with both of you here today, we can get 2 different viewpoints. We can certainly get the viewpoint of what a backer or an advisor is looking for out of a partner. And then obviously, Willis, what are you looking for specifically in a partner? Because it seems like culture and fit is a big part of that equation.
Absolutely.
And this is really how I'd love to, frame the answer to this question. And it relates back to our vision, which is twofold: work on transactions in which management teams are passionate about joining together and gain amazing references. And Willis, when you looked at the, kind of 2 folders that he has of all the people that he talked to, at the end of the day, he found a transaction that he was passionate about joining together with LNC, and he looked high and he looked low. And it's that same approach really that each of you want to use, looking high and low and finding, like, as an M&A advisor, my job is not done. I create options. It's not done until we find the passion of two groups and teams wanting to join together. So to answer that, kind of for Willis, at this stage, let's look at kind of things that he can bring to the table and offer to, to potential partners. In Willis, if you want to kind of talk through that, kind of what's in it for, just other exceptional businesses that you would partner with and that you've found this, just kind of meeting of the minds and are passionate about joining together.
Right. So I knew I'd found a good partner when we were talking with LNC, and I said, well, how do you structure your deals? And their response was sort of, how do you want us to structure our deal? Right. So they have that flexibility. They also have the ability to do equity and debt with the same group. So it's just, you're not having to say everything twice. It makes it a little bit easier. But we give those owners a chance, first of all, for some liquidity, right? And there's flexibility. But it was also very much a process that it didn't feel like I had to, you never felt like you were getting tricked. You never felt like you were being lured into something. And you can get that. I mean, when you're talking about your business, which, outside of your family is sort of part of your legacy to the world, I guess, you want to make sure you're going to a place that works for you and for your key employees, right? And so when you see opportunities, you can go for it and you can jump. So that point number two, it allows that flexibility, but also keeps you nimble. What we want to do is continue to grow. Now, if everybody joins up and everybody stops growing, the value doesn't grow nearly as much. At that point, it's just a conglomerate of middling businesses that aren't taking off. We want folks who have a record of growth and are continuing to do that, and we want to support them as they go. For example, there may be a group that has great ideas around online marketing. Well, I want to hear them, right? And please don't email me, everybody, with a bunch of your inventory. It's your people. We're in the professional services space. So this is a great idea, a great way to add additional people. We've got about 80 folks, so we've seen a lot. But what about when we're 200? We will have seen a lot more. And it's great to have that group that you can call on when you need a hand, that you talk with two peers who've seen us before. So we're excited about that.
So, when you talk a little bit about the synergy that needs to happen and how it gives the organization as a whole the opportunity to grow out, what specifically are you looking for right now as you embark on this journey of being an MSP platform? What are some of the traits that folks that might be on the call today would want to understand that they should have in place before they even start the conversation? And what is a Cantey Solutions looking for today?
Right. So our primary focus, although we're talking with folks slightly outside of this region too, but our primary focus is to build a regional MSP, a world-class MSP in the Southeast. We've had a lot of great conversations with doing that. I just don't think that everything has to consolidate to the largest cities in the United States every time. So that there are a lot of great MSPs in these markets here in the Southeast that's doing that. We're flexible in terms of the amount of revenue. We're talking with a group now that is just below $1 million, and we can go up to 15 or 20 million in revenue. We're totally comfortable with those pieces. So I could tell you the numbers. We're interested more in the managed services side, which we think means more than 50% recurring revenue, but there are great businesses out there that are making that transition from selling a lot of hardware into this services space. And we think we can help them with that process. In the same way they can help us get a better deal for Dell, because I've been working at it for 14 years and I'm still not getting the pricing I should get. Nothing against Dell. Nothing against Dell, and please don't hold back our shipments. You've already held them back enough. But my point is that there's all of those pieces, but in the end, it's the people and it's the culture that we want. And I'm looking for, in particular with the management team, folks that want to stick around to help us build this thing together. They're not just excited about what they built, right, which we should all be proud of that, but what we can do now and where we can go together. And if the numbers work and the people side doesn't work, if they don't understand the urgency that we put into what we're doing, or they're not interested in the level of support that we do for clients, then it's not going to fit and it won't matter. because it won't grow successfully together. And you got to be a little flexible. We're going to be flexible, right? So we're making a move from one piece of software to another, and I'm not going to go into what it is, right? Because they might be sponsors of this show. I don't know. So don't get Rachel mad at me. But the point is we're going from one system to another, not because we're not happy with this, but because the market is here, right? And we need to be where most of these groups that we're looking to bring on board, where they are. So we're that flexible, and I expect that flexibility of any partner that we work with.
Beautiful. Hey, maybe your thoughts a little bit about what a prospective seller should be thinking about, as they enter into these conversations.
We have, that's a great question. And I'm going to be, the best way to answer that, I'm going to be moderating a panel at IT Nation that's coming up beginning of November. And there are four different panelists, each that have a PE-backed MSP platform. And I asked that same question to the group on a call recently. There were 5 of us on the call. And the thing that they said was the most important thing when you get a call from Willis, or one of those 4 people call you and you have the first call. If you're in the seller's chair, you're thinking, hey, I don't want to say the wrong thing to hurt my value. I don't want to say, and is the wrong thing to say, I want to be done 90 days from now. Like when the transaction closes, I don't want to continue to work. And what was fascinating about asking that question and kind of hearing all the responses was they all unanimously said, we can help somebody get more value if they're honest and transparent with us right out of the gate. You tell us what you want and what's best for you, and we'll design, to Willis's point, we'll design options, we'll design the best options for you. So there's the only wrong answer when somebody is asking you a question about selling your business is one that's not truthful. Like, it saves everybody time and it doesn't impair the value of your business for you to be transparent about your objectives.
I even think, to add on to what Abe's saying, we've all got problems, right? This is business. There's a reason they call it work. We all have problems. So if somebody asks you something like, well, you have 50 people, is it hard to find good people? And you say, nope, not a problem, never an issue. They just show up at the door. Well, that's going to cause them to question everything else that you've said.
Yeah.
And even if you're not honest, believe me, during diligence, the truth comes out. So, and you don't have to have this masterful command of everything that they say. Willis, in 2019 in April, we noticed that hardware sales went down. Why was that? The real answer is, I don't have any idea. I haven't looked at 2019 April, probably since 2019 April, but I'll look into it and I'll get back to you. And I'm sure there's a reason why the sales went down by this. So I do think it's worth having a good understanding of your books. And that's the case for any business owner, right? Tracking your finances is not something you should outsource to anybody. You should understand it at a high level, but all of those details, it all comes out. And I just recommend being honest and candid. And that way they find out who you are and you find out who they are. And if they're guarded and weird, then stop talking to them. Call me, right? Whatever that may be. So
I think it's like any relationship, you're like you said, this is a partnership that you're building. You're wanting to talk with someone that you're going to be working with for many years. It's going to come out. So bring it out at the beginning and then it's not weird.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So Abe, maybe at this stage, you can share a little bit about how Focus can help people within this journey and exactly what you do to support, whether it's somebody looking to establish a platform or it's somebody looking to become a partner within a platform.
Sure. And let's talk about the situation right here too with Willis as an example. there were, Willis had files of people that had reached out and contacted him. And I would say my advice to, if your plan is to be, if your plan is to become a platform, you want to be super active in meeting everybody like Willis did. Like Willis knows founders and CEOs of PE-backed platforms. He talked with a lot of them through the process, and now he knows who his competitors are pretty well. They courted him and vice versa, and he, explored that route sincerely to potentially go down it. Ultimately, kind of went in a different direction. If your objective is to retire, I think, probably sooner rather than later, engage an M&A advisor and have them be transparent what you want accomplished, and they will help you accomplish the objectives. If your goal is to be a platform, and I said this to the 4 people that were on this IT Nation call, kind of like, you guys were really exceptional and really didn't need me as much. And it, you've been able to go and buy all these companies. You naturally have this skill set. That being said, one of those, all 4 of those parties I've done transactions with in Willis, part of what I said with one of them, with the others on the call, was, I think when you did your transaction, if you would have involved me, for instance, in negotiating the net working capital, you would have gotten better terms. And he said, yes, yes, that's the case. And I learned that when you were representing the seller and I was now in the chair as the buyer with the private equity group. So I think also working, if you want to be a platform, working with an M&A advisor is really valuable. You may not view it as valuable, but what you can learn, from myself and from others, will help you be a better platform, and will help you when you're competing in other, for other assets. So there's kind of, no right or wrong answer. Trust your gut. All of us are entrepreneurs, and we've been successful as entrepreneurs because we do things on our own and don't always have to have other people do everything for us. So anyway, that's kind of, kind of background. And in fact, that was a question they asked, with me as the advisor on the phone moderating these four other PE-backed platforms. Would you hire an advisor? And Rashad said back, I have this debate with my private equity group. Should we acquire friends, or should we acquire MSPs that are in banked processes? And the private equity group said, do the ones in the banked processes. They're going to squeeze out a lot of EBITDA, but you're going to know what's really there. Versus with friends, there may be difficulty getting information. There may not be a coach on their side to help them feel like they're getting a fair deal. That being said, there's a lot of really good transactions that have happened without M&A advisors involved. So it's I think it's just have an open mind, and perhaps 25% of the value that an M&A advisor provides relates to the introduction. Guess what? Willis found LNC. LNC found Willis. Focus's MSP team and myself, we weren't involved in finding that transaction in which Willis was passionate about joining together. It happened organically. And there's value to have an advisor involved to get the transaction done, even when you found that. I would say probably 75% of the value relates, 25% is kind of finding the party and 75% is negotiating the LOI, and then from signed LOI to close. And then really your ongoing relationship. Like, I love that Willis and I both approach the relationship as, hey, we're going to both be at this for a decade. Willis, I'd love to bring you M&A targets kind of perpetually. And we didn't look at the trend. We didn't look at his private equity investment as a transaction. And Willis and I are going to go our separate ways. We looked at it as the start of a relationship where, now here we're together in a webinar, and I'm invested and he's invested back and forth, and we're helping each other out. And so anyway, that long-winded answer, but that's kind of the inside baseball on, do I do this on my own or get an advisor?
Yeah, and I'll add to that. For your listeners, Brian, 3/4 of what you think about investment banking and private equity is not true, right? This is not the barbarians at the gate scenario. This is not. I called one of the companies that LNC Partners had invested in. And I called him and I said, "Hey, what's this been like? How did it go?" And he said, "Well, my first priority was not to have private equity overlords in my day, right? That's not what I wanted in my business." And he said, and I didn't get that. These guys have been great, but I always thought that was a funny term. And then, you talk with folks about, well, what value I built the business, what value does investment banking bring to this? And I like the way we did it. I had the help and the advice, but I did respond to some outreach LNC had done before. And I like that. I like that I picked them out. And I like the process that I did, which was talking with them extensively. Sometimes you get in sort of a feeding frenzy, and we backed away from a few of those because I want to talk. If it's Brian IT, I want Brian and I to have multiple conversations about how we approach business, how we deal with our team, how we do this. And so I like that back and forth. But if you're going through a bank process, it's tough because there'll be 50 people that want to talk to Brian. So you've got to decide what's right for you. I will tell you that the advice and support we see from Focus was great. And I thought it was going to end after the transaction was done. Abe and I talk all the time. And it's been great. And we're going to continue to talk all the time. And we're going to do deals together. And we're going to find great fits. And if you've got an investment bank that's any good, what they care about more than anything is not your fee, it's their reputation, because that will lead them to more financial success down the road. And if you go through a good situation with them and it's well matched, then I'm not just going to do one deal. So we will go back to them. And Abe has figured me out. Like, there's some folks that he probably looks at that match our geographic and numbers criteria, but he knows that the CEO and I might not get along or whatever. I don't know. Abe, I hope you're filtering it in some way, right?
Sure.
So he doesn't bring them to us. And LNC was very competitive on all terms, not just price or whatever. They were very competitive on everything. So I'll stand up against anybody when it comes to that piece. But the culture and the fit's more important that works. But the value will decrease over time if you're fighting all day.
Do you mind if I pop in with a quick question from our attendees here? Chris Knotts asks, what happens if you can't find quality targets to add to your platform and then can't grow at the pace that the PE team is expecting?
I'm going to say I love that guy, Chris Knotts. I know him and have worked with him. I'm sitting in Charlottesville actually today, and have Chris and I have worked together, not a client yet. I hope at one point he will be. Like, I've viewed in my relationship with him, it's I'm in Charlottesville, there is a potential business for, like, new business opportunity for him that I've been trying to connect him with. A very large part of my job when we take on a new assignment is to build an M&A pipeline. because if I build that M&A pipeline, the business becomes more valuable because the private equity group sees, okay, when I do this, I buy this as the platform. I then have this nice path, I have this nice path to go deploy more money. And most of the private equity groups are either looking for, if it's their first platform investment, 2.5 million of EBITDA or 5 million of EBITDA. And it just mainly relates to the size of the fund that they raised. But the goal, for Willis also is kind of, we were in his process, we were showing some of the buyers, we were showing them targets in Willis's M&A pipeline to make the business kind of investment opportunity to them fit, if you will, depending upon the situation. So it's really a fun part of the process to me. It's something, if you have an advisor and they have a deep M&A network kind of pipeline already, like Focus is bringing 3 add-on opportunities to market in the next 2 weeks. And my being able to steer that to, to clients, companies that we're helping raise money is really helpful for them. They're worth more if they have that pipeline than if they don't. Hopefully that answers the question. And hi, Chris.
Yeah. So Chris, thanks for listening. It's not just my mom out there. It's also someone named Chris Knotts and the 4 people on this call, which is great. What happens if you can't find quality targets and add them to your platform? I'll be honest with you. I'm not even accepting that. It's a fair question. We're going to find them. And if we don't find them, then I will kidnap a founder of an MSP.
And we now have that recorded.
That's right. So if I call you, you better call back because I might kidnap you. Now, I do think that, any PE firm that invests in you to build a platform, they're doing it because they think you can. They take risk when they do that. But if I'm unable to connect with folks, and then they're folks that can connect me with folks, and if 5 years into it, I'm unable to find anybody as a dance partner, then it means I'm a horrible dancer. And it's not on the PE firm, it's on me. Right. So we can do that.
All right. Well, we are getting near the end of our time, so I want to make sure we've got a few more questions that we have to head into here. I'll just put in my last statement as it relates to what we were talking about before we answer Chris's question. The other thing I think is important for you to consider when you're working with an advisor is your own emotions in this. You are giving up your baby, potentially, or taking your baby to a new home. And sometimes we can be a little blind during negotiations to what that means and where we need to get to. And that's something else you got to consider when you're bringing an advisor. Can I maximize my deal? Or more importantly, find the right buyer because I'm not feeling emotional to it. I think, Willis, you mentioned about, should I marry my friends, if you will, as part of this process? A lot of times we see mergers born out of relationships that came out of IT Nation Evolve groups or other, relationships like that. And while those people loved each other socially in the moment, once they actually came together as a group, it wasn't there. And that's really where I think, having an advisor can help counsel you too, because they're looking beyond just the immediacy of that moment. Can we make 1 + 1 = 3? They're also looking at, are these systems going to mesh? Are the people going to mesh? What is the culture like? They can investigate both sides a little bit more freely. And that certainly helps the cause as well.
Yeah, it's a high stakes conversation you're having with a potential buyer. And so you go in there and you look at it and you start thinking about class of shares. And I didn't have these problems, right? But there are other folks that, okay, you're going to have, this is the vision, but here's our class of shares, and here's your class of shares, and here's how this would work, and here's how that would work. And it gets confusing, and you don't realize that most of the details are things that matter to attorneys that will never affect you in your life. or in 100 lifetimes, maybe in 101. But some of them are small and don't seem significant, but they could be, right? And they will be that next time around. So it's great to have an advisor, a good attorney, an investment bank, some type of partner to help advise you through that, somebody who's done it before.
So with that, Rachel, I think we've got some questions. I think I saw something come in from Guy Walton.
Yes. Guy is asking for resources to explore the fit of an established storage provider to his risk management consulting firm. Looking for an acquisition in the next 12 months, increasing their annual profits from 700,000 to an estimated 1.5 million. But Guy is uncertain of where to start.
Call Abe. Next question.
It's probably the easiest question, but maybe Abe, you've got some idea of some resources that somebody might be early in the process can explore on the way to that conversation with you.
Sure, and probably just having like a 10, 15-minute call and understanding more about the acquisition criteria that the person's looking for. And then I think you said it was Guy, understanding more about the acquisition criteria, and then, kind of that will help us kind of direct in the right location.
And for everybody that's attending today, we'll be providing you with the contact information for Abe, of course, and I'm certain Willis would love to hear from you as well if you're in the Southeast region and looking at your next move. So we'll make sure that that's in place for you before, or soon after this meeting as well.
Certainly.
Yeah. We do have a couple more questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I see a couple more in here. The who pays the advisor and what is the average cost? And so the advisor can work on one or the other side of the transaction, either for the buyer. What we would call a buy side assignment. So like with Willis, I could work on the buy side and contact targets in 10 states kind of surrounding his business, and would get a success fee when the transaction closes. So on the buy side, I could help and coach the seller, and that's a pretty common thing. My fiduciary duty on the buy side would then be to Willis. So I'm ultimately working for him. So there are transactions when we work on the buy side where there's not an M&A advisor on the other side, but they will always have an accountant, attorney, kind of, et cetera. So that's one way. If you get approached on the phone and advisor calls you and says, I'm working on the buy side for this company, that's the success fees being paid by the buyer. The issue with that, as opposed to if you have an advisor work for you on the sell side, the sell side advisor will not, like, my loyalty allegiance is to Willis when I'm on the buy side and I call you about a transaction with him. I can't show you and won't show you to your business to any other buyers. Versus if I'm on the sell side representing you. So when I represented Willis on the sell side, I could introduce other buyers into the mix. And even though he had a party that he liked, I could create more competition and kind of give him more options to pick from, to be certain, like, if competition's needed to kind of drive it to market, get to market value that's not already there, we can introduce that.
That was actually the question I was gonna.
Yeah, an average cost. I mean, we're up to now, people have to pay us 100% of the value. So when Willis sold his company for tens of millions, he had to pay all of that to Focus. And so he's, it was like, we said, well, we'll let you keep. No,
I would not be smiling on this podcast. If I would not be on this webcast, I would have kidnapped Abe.
Yeah. But from a cost perspective, it's a function of the size of the transaction. It's not uncommon, and people are surprised that a buyer will spend $1 million to acquire an asset by the time success fees, accounting fees, legal fees. $1 million is not uncommon in MSP transactions. I'd say between 500 and $1 million, and sometimes more.
Can I hop into one of the questions, Rachel? There's a misconception out there. He said, well, EBITDA is a huge driver of value. What are the most valuable drivers? Process maturity, contract length, revenue, location, etc. So I thought going into this, oh my gosh, I don't lock clients into long-term contracts, and that's going to be a huge drag on valuation, all this kind of stuff. And our approach as a business, and I think a lot of MSPs are the same way, is that we don't want to be locked into a room with somebody that doesn't want to be in the room with us, right? So as a business, and the sales process can be hard. I'd rather say, hey, try us out for a year, but we have an out. If you want to get out, it's okay, but give us a chance to fix problems if they're there, right? But then let's go and we'll do this. And we have some competitors that lock clients into 3 years. And we know we have clients that said, I've got, 11 months left of my contract. They've told me they'll sue me if I get out of it. But when we're out of this, we're going to go to Cantey. And I thought, what a horrible thing to have to tell your client. Like, I will sue you if you try to get out of this 3-year contract that I've locked you in. Some buyers may want to see that. But my experience was, we said, look, we've got client retention rates at nearly 95%. We keep our clients because they like us, because we do a good job for them. Not because of something that's on a legal document, not because of the contract. So other buyers may look at that differently. The way Cantey looks at it is I'd much rather see high client retention, high client satisfaction than your legal document that is built tougher than Fort Knox. Because when that ends, if you're not doing a good job, those big clients are at risk of leaving. And that seemed to work for us. And of course,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Abe, go ahead. Do you agree with that, or do you think I'm crazy?
I agree. There, the finance and the finance people and lending people are, all things being equal, would prefer to have longer signed contracts. But I agree with I'd rather have you as my MSP, and I'm sure I'd have a much longer working relationship with you because I like working with you than anything that's going to be on the contract. So like in the real world, your approach is the most, is the most sticky and valuable. And I've found in competitive processes, when people don't have contracts, they just reference back to their actual experience rate, kind of the customer retention, both on revenue and logos. And it's not mandatory that there be contracts that are there. Everybody would prefer it. The lender would prefer it. The equity investor would prefer it, but it's not a deal killer. To that question that was asked right here, EBITDA is a huge driver of value. What are the next most valuable? On this call I was referencing before with 4 other platform founders, some of them are in the midst of recapitalizing and selling to the next larger private equity group. And what I heard on that call, and I've heard it in many other times, organic growth is super important. And that's why LNC really likes Cantey. That's why I really like Cantey. It's got a long-term track record of organic growth. The M&A growth is great and valuable. The most valuable component, in addition to EBITDA and percent recurring, is your organic growth rate. And that's a win of kind of joining with a Cantey with that in your DNA of the business. Kind of your rollover investment into that has a good, kind of looking back historically, can affect it prospectively.
Amazing. Well, I do believe in the interest of time and to be respectful of everyone's commitments for the rest of the day, we should probably be wrapping up. Is there anything else that either of you would like to share before we close out this amazing learning session?
This was great. Thank you for having me. And Brian, it really was the softball question, so thanks for not scaring me off.
We didn't go too hard.
Forcing me to hang out.
Give a little bit more time. We only had an hour, but no, I appreciate you guys both joining us. I know this could be a mystery for MSPs because it's not something we do in every single day, right? Being part of an acquisition usually only happens a few times in our lives if we're lucky. And, I think having a better understanding of what to look for and who to engage on this is so important, because for most of us, just understanding what we don't understand is always a challenge. And this is definitely a community of those that want to self-educate and learn more. And certainly, guidance from folks like yourselves, it really helps the cause. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And again,
Yeah.
to close out, go ahead, Rachel.
I was just going to say
Nope, I think you're going where I was going, so I'll let you take
probably.
it.
To all of our attendees and everyone who's watching the recording of this, thank you so much. And as Brian said at the beginning, be looking for more things just like this coming from VCIO Toolbox as I am stepping into a more active role with the company, and Brian and I start working together to create more education resources for all of you. We're very excited for that.
Yep, and I will include in the posting with the videos Abe and Willis's LinkedIn link, so you can reach out to them. And that's probably the easiest way to probably start an engagement and start a conversation, unless you guys feel otherwise. And we'll share whatever you require at that stage. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's